Hey, hi! Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner. I'm a critic, consultant, and programmer based in Toronto, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Ava Maria Safai, a Vancouver director whose first feature, Foreigner, makes its world premiere this week at Montreal's Fantasia Festival. Half coming-of-age drama and half horror, it stars Rose Degan as Yasmin, an Iranian teenager newly arrived in Canada with her father and grandmother, who's plunged straight into the maelstrom of high school, where she meets a trio of girls who seem to genuinely like her, but also subtly pressure her to be, less formed. The push and pull of authenticity and conformity unleashes something dark in Yasmin, something that radically changes her and threatens to send the school's power dynamic off its axis. Foreigner is screening Thursday, August 29th at 9:30 p.m., with a second screening Saturday, August 2nd at 2:20 p.m., and tickets should still be available at Fantasia.com. Catch it if you can. Ava picked The Seed of the Sacred Fig, Mohammad Rasoulov's 2024 allegorical drama and festival hit about a Tehrani family whose lives slide into chaos when their patriarch, Iman, is elevated to a judgeship. Meanwhile, his daughters are getting caught up in the hijab protests, and their mother, Najma, worries they'll bring unwanted attention to the family. Things only worsen when the pistol Iman was given for protection goes missing, leading him to become increasingly paranoid, ultimately pitting the family against each other by putting them all on trial in the basement of his childhood home. Like I said, it's allegorical. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Okay, so I grew up reading a lot of Shakespeare, and there's a line in Hamlet somewhere where Hamlet is talking to the actors, and he talks about how all the art that we make has to be a reflection of the real world, and we have to hold a mirror up to society. So I've always been really into movies and theater and music that in some way reflect our real life. So I watched Seed of the Sacred Fig at VIFF in the fall with my dad, which is very interesting because my dad is the complete opposite of the dad in the movie. My dad's a musician, and he left Iran to be able to pursue music here. And then in the movie, there's a dad who is part of the system. So it was a lot of fun for us to watch together.
Obviously, the question is, how did your dad respond to it?
My dad loved it. I think that's the reason why I pitched this movie as one for us to talk about, because he liked it so much, and he never has visceral reactions to film like that. And yeah, we were both clapping during the movie. It was one of those movies that when I watched it, I really connected with it. It felt like it was a piece of our lives kind of being told on screen. Yeah. So he was very happy with the film. He commented on the production design. So
wow.
He does it.
Yeah, hardly. We don't even do that.
Yeah.
That's great. And obviously the depiction of the situation in Iran in the film is crowdsourced, right? There's news footage and real video footage intercut with the fictional narrative that's going on, but it really does convey a sense of the moment that's happening, or that was happening when it was shot, and I'm assuming is still happening in various ways. Every time the topic of Iran comes up in cinema now, I keep wondering what's going to happen next politically and globally. Are we starting to see what the country looked like before whatever is about to happen happens? But this feels like even more of a time capsule of specificity because it plays out through the family's eyes, but the whole world is pressing in on them all the time structurally. Right?
Yeah.
Or is that just me as someone who doesn't know the experience of the culture?
I love documentary. Again, another reason why I picked the film is because of the footage that was cut in. I feel like if they had done reenactments, it just wouldn't have been the same. There was some power in them showing what's actually going on. There's a scene, I think, where the mom takes a right, and because someone's take her, don't go that way, it's really busy, but she takes the right anyway, and then it just cuts to all the footage of the university out of nowhere. And yeah, I think it was really important for them to kind of create this hybrid filmmaking style. I've not really seen anything like it. So if you know more movies that do that, where they mix real footage in, I thought it was really cool. And I like that they took a very complex topic and kind of boiled it down through the lens of this family. And as things get worse in Iran, things also get worse in the family, and like the surveillance increases, and they start to feel very like claustrophobic in the house. And yeah, like the dad kind of becomes more and more part of the system, but he's dragging his family through it as well, which is very interesting. I think the footage helps with that because it really puts it into context.
Oh, absolutely. The only other movie I can think of, and I'm sure I'm missing something really obvious, but the only one I can think of is Medium Cool,
Nerd.
which, yeah,
Now I'm
it's in the
gonna watch.
Criterion Collection. I think it's still on the channel. It's directed by a cinematographer, a guy named Haskell Wexler, who's a genius cinematographer. This is one of his few features as a director, and it starred Robert Forster as a news cameraman at the Democratic National Convention in 1968, and they shot it there. And everything that happens, pretty much, except for what Forster and his characters are doing, the other actors with him, the backdrop is real,
That's
and
so cool.
it's really striking.
It's like kind of also Borat or like Nathan for You, but like in reverse, how they just kind of like show up at the locations and like it turns into a comedy thing. But like this was interesting because they never had to go there. They just had to combine real life into this family story, and it was very well done.
Yeah, the economy of it is really, you don't have scenes where actors go by a thing that's happening. They're just isolated in the home or they're with each other. And then, yeah, turn the corner, cut to the crowd shot, and we buy it. We believe it immediately just because the whole, the atmosphere, this constant tension and squirming, uncomfortable sense of walls closing in. It's not claustrophobic because there's so much space between everyone, but I think that's part of it too. Like there's all this air between them and they still can't communicate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the Shakespeare reference you mentioned, I was thinking more about King Lear here because it's a father and daughters,
Yes.
but also, yeah, there's definitely a Hamlet thing where he's incapable of deciding what to do, and the Macbeth of it all, of being like, it's all I suppose it's every Shakespearean trope from the tragedies, is someone being pulled further and further into something that he simply does not want to be part of, and then realizing his complicity, right?
I'm really glad you mentioned King Lear because King Lear is my favorite Shakespeare play. And I remember like when I saw a dad and then like three women that are up against him, and the dad is like kind of crazy, but like the women are not, the women are actually very justified in this, but like they go to very extreme lengths kind of by the end of the movie. Um which is really interesting because you're with the dad kind of from the beginning and you see how he falls into the system. So it did really remind me of King Lear, except in a context that I'm much more familiar with. So it's nice to see like that these stories are not dying and that they're still kind of relevant. I wish we lived in a world where they wouldn't be anymore and there was more equality, but yeah, it's cool how things from like hundreds of years ago still resonate now.
Yeah, 400, 500-year-old plays still kind of fitting into our culture. I don't know if it speaks to how much people lean on existing narratives to justify their own behavior, to understand what they're doing, which I can totally see, or if, yeah, nothing has changed and we're all just still playing out the same thing over and over again because we simply cannot learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know what Hamlet did. I won't do that. And then, oh, yeah, I did exactly the same. Or
Yes.
Lear or Macbeth, or I'm forgetting something else really. Titus Andronicus kind of comes in here too, because it's about a father refusing to listen to his children and losing everything. I mean, I think that was simply, kings and rulers and despots. It's an easy theme for Shakespeare. But yes, it translates so easily into contemporary Iran, even though he's a king within his own home, which is sort of his downfall. The idea that he, by being made a judge, even though he doesn't have any power, because he's just a rubber stamp for the government, he still has to put that inflated ego somewhere and directs it into his own home, even when it's the one place he should put it all aside, right? Like the whole idea of everybody in this family wanting something so clearly from one another and not being able to give it or get it is just so much more tragic than anything else that's happening. I mean, because of what Russell does, and locking us in there with them in that excruciating third act, where for 2 hours we have been building towards something, and then when we get there, it's just like, oh, it's just more. It's just so much more of these tensions, and now there's no release valve, there's nowhere to go, it's going to go badly, and it in fact does go badly for for everyone, but it's riveting.
I watched an interview with the director, and he was talking about like how he developed the characters and why these things keep happening, and he spoke a lot about cowardice and how things don't change because people are too afraid to change the system, and so they kind of fall into it. So it is really tragic to watch like this dad, and he's trying to at the same time connect with the family and be like, you know what, let's go on a road trip. Let's like, put our heads together and be close again. But at the same time, he like uses that as a weapon kind of against the family to then isolate them even more and get rid of their phones and their identities. And that's such a huge thing in Iran. Like so many of my family members don't have access to internet. We can't reach them, and it's the only form of communication. And yet the story at the same time is relayed through that footage that is being shared online. Um, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, how does the regime control the information that they do release? How is it packaged, and how is it what does the average Iranian know of what's happening?
I think we all know. That's the problem. It's just that for a regime like this to stay in place, there has to be a certain number of people that enable it. And I think that's what this movie's about and why it's so cool because it kind of calls that out, that we as people also need to step up and do more to talk about it because we all know, like, we see the videos on YouTube. There was the 2023 Woman Life Freedom movement after the murder of Masa Amini. But nothing changed. And it's kind of the same thing that's been happening over and over for 40 plus years. And there's been 100,000s of other Masas, and no one has really done anything to change it. And even when they kill off someone who is kind of exercising this power, another person steps in to the role to keep the regime going. So I think that's what's really interesting about the characters, because there's a lot of discourse about the dad feeling guilty about having to sign these papers that execute a person. And then the wife responds and says, well, if you don't do it, like someone else is going to, and then you're going to lose your job and our family will be affected. And then he just disputes against that. And then she says, well, no, it's the prosecutor's choice. And so you're not responsible. She takes that responsibility away from him. And I feel like she kind of starts worse than him. And then he gets really bad because she's kind of enabling him and saying, it's fine, let's get our 3-bedroom apartment. And then by the end, he has the whole family like locked in a literal dungeon that's already built in his childhood home.
Yeah, it was waiting. That's
Yeah.
kind of the unnerving part where you realize, oh, this was here the whole time. It's only ever been a matter of when someone is going to use it.
Yeah.
And how easily Aman becomes a cog. He's already a cog, really. When we meet him, he's just not a cog in a position of power. And then he still has no power, but he believes he does, or he's having guilt, but he's doing it all anyway. And then it's a simple extra step to accuse his family and then lock them in this space and basically attempt to browbeat it out of them, with the threat of violence always lingering, and there's always the potential for this thing to escalate. I mean, the film is nothing but escalation. The protests are escalating outside, and they're responding on the inside by sort of reflecting it back at each other. But the moment at dinner when Rizwan opens herself up and just delivers the it's not really a manifesto, but it's just holding herself to her beliefs and refusing to just say yes and responds to him with genuine commitment, emotion, political understanding. Like, she's thought this out. It's a coherent argument, and he just says it's propaganda. And the moment she kind of just sits there and listens to him, and there's that tiny little breach of like faith and love of family where he doesn't even listen to anything. She has just opened her heart and taken a huge risk, obviously, in a culture that is looking for uh, what's the word? Fifth columnists, I suppose, like people who are working against the regime, to just come out and say this to someone in a position to do something about it. It's just this hard, for a split second, you think, oh, she reached him. And then, nope, shuts her right down. It's just so, I think like that feels like the biggest betrayal in the entire film, the fact that he is so past listening.
Yes. And I think the unfortunate thing is that most Resvans that are real in Iran would just leave. Like, I think of my parents and how they spent their whole lives studying the arts and music. And then, in the blink of an eye, overnight, just after they got their degrees, they no longer can do that, or you risk death just because someone else doesn't agree with music. Um, and so you leave, and then there's not as many people left in the country or in the home in this case that can kind of fight against that, and you kind of see that with her after they go to that therapy session that the dad prepares for them, where they're basically just being interrogated, and then she just becomes more fearful. Like, he starts questioning her about the gun. That's a whole other discussion, the gun. But she starts being really scared of him, and say, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. And then she wants to confess on the video camera. Like, she's scared into not saying how she feels. So it'd be interesting to see like a sequel of like what Resvan's life would be like 20 years from now, when the system is kind of baked in a bit more, and how is it for a woman who loses her father in a country that's very inherently patriarchal at this point in time.
Yeah.
um and then one more thing that I just thought of is my dad taught me music history, and he said that back in the day, like, to scare and influence people when all people had was faith and religion, they would put like big organs in the churches and play very loud, threatening music, and it would feel kind of like theater. So it's sad and interesting that people's faith and religion is still also used kind of as a weapon against them. And a lot of why the dad keeps to the regime is because of his personal beliefs. And it's sad that those two things are intertwined because they don't have to be.
But it's the oldest method, right? Like it is the thing that has always worked on
Yeah.
people. God wants you to do this, or I say God wants you to want you to do this. Western film critics, basically, people like me, rarely consider the weight of theocracy
Yeah.
in films from, I mean, not just Iran, like America too. There's a whole Christian fundamentalism running through all of that, but from governments that hold the Bible or the Quran or the Torah up first as a
Yeah.
shield for, or justification for whatever it is they're doing, with God on their side, the it colors everything. And because faith and religion are so specific to the individual, every single person has a different experience of it and a different interpretation of it. You can never have uniformity. You always have to have an autocrat running this thing. You have to have somebody telling you exactly what to follow and what to ignore.
Yeah.
And so, again, here it felt, it's not even an irony. It's not even a metaphor. It's simply the text that Iman is a judge, like a literal judge of what behavior is appropriate and what isn't. Even though he has no power in the court, he brings it home, and it seems to get worse. Right? He goes from being self-doubting and maybe a little weak with his family just because he loves them, to hardening and becoming not just judgmental, but exacting and strict and unyielding in a way that is really unpleasant to watch as a performer. I mean, again, I want to give credit to everybody in this. It's not just Russell F directing it. The actors are phenomenal.
Very good. Yes.
But this whole world falls apart the second one person asks a question, right? So he simply can't tolerate questions.
Yeah. And I think he becomes kind of a step crazier when he loses that gun, because then his life is at risk as well. He knows that he can lose his job or worse, like go to prison or be killed. And so to kind of selfishly protect himself, he throws his whole family under the bus, and he doesn't suspect anyone else. He doesn't suspect someone that maybe doesn't stand for the same values as him. He looks to his own family first, which is really sad.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the film yet. He is right in that one thing.
True.
That's the thing, right? Like, he is correct, but it brings him nothing. Like knowing that it was for a family member who took the gun doesn't help anybody.
No.
And by the time the Inquisition begins, the person who did take the gun is so terrified of admitting it that there's never going to be any truth to anything. No one's going to admit to anything. So it just becomes this house of cards of not even a house of cards. It's two cards pushed against each other that just will fall over at the slightest breeze, because the truth is the one thing nobody really wants.
Yes. And I do like how they kind of put it through this thriller lens. I feel like we don't get enough of that as like Iranian audiences and filmmakers. Like, I love that they did it through this mystery of who took the gun. And I remember kind of an audible gasp in the audience when we saw the person who took the gun like pull it out. But yeah, it was like a fun and smart and very engaging way of conveying a much bigger message that it's going to be the younger generations that change things, but will the younger generations also fall in line with the system, or will they kind of break free and take a risk?
Hey, it's Norm, interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Last week, I caught up to the new releases of Final Destination Bloodlines, Friendship, and All We Imagine Is Light, and the new 4K editions of High Society, To Catch a Thief, and Clueless. Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io, or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. Everybody loses in this film, except the regime. The regime just continues, which that's the sad part. Not the sad part, but the bitter irony of it is that it ends on an almost triumphant note. Those protests are continuing, but yes, this family is ruined, and we know nothing changed. Like, we just some part of the film knows too that it's going to take more than this small set of protests to topple the government, that this is going to continue and continue and continue. But it's just so heartbreaking to watch this triumph outdoors. And I know there are other films that end in a similar way, like the crowds rushing in, or the sun coming up after everything is over. But it's just of no comfort to anyone in the film.
Yeah. And I think the costume designer was very smart and put the youngest daughter, I think her name is Sana, in like a Disney shirt. Like, she keeps putting her in these kid pajamas and like star print shirts, and then she'll put the dad in like these very dark kind of official clothing that gets like tighter and more serious as the movie goes on. But it's almost sad. It is actually sad that there's just a girl in like a Mickey Mouse shirt, like pointing at a gun at her dad. And even at the end, she's like too scared to shoot him. That says a lot. There's a lot of children that have died in Iran that maybe wouldn't have even had the chance to kind of speak up in that way or make a statement in that way. So I think it was a really smart decision.
Yeah, and it plays the conflict of needing a parent to care in such a visceral, ugly way. I don't think anyone in the film is irredeemable. I think the whole point of the film is that they're led to these places in their moments, and there is always a chance to turn back. But yeah, watching a little girl realize she can't, it's a reflection or an echo of the scene at the dinner table, right? Like, you cannot count on your father to help you in this moment, to understand.
Yeah, and I like movies like that where it's kind of the environment that's the villain and there's not necessarily a antagonist because our hero is technically the dad. Like if you think of him being the main character and we're supposed to be kind of on his side and also worrying about the gun and his career and he's responsible in a way for taking care of his family.
Sure.
Um, where was I going with that? But
Well, that he's ultimately not the hero, right? But there,
yeah,
if it very quickly, well, not very quickly, it very gradually shifts our perspective. But yeah, you're right. We open with him. He is the center. He's the central character for a while. It does feel like he's Lear and Macbeth at the same time, with his wife urging him to do the wrong thing for the right reasons, or what she insists are the right reasons. And
yes.
yeah, I get where she's coming from too, right? Safety and there is safety and advancement. There is security in this position for as long as they have it. They are safer.
Yeah. And I think it comes from privilege as well. I think that's something that's very overlooked when talking about what's happening in Iran is a lot of people just want to keep their privilege. They want to keep their fancy apartments and possibly upgrade to bigger ones. So it's cool to see this woman that has all this privilege and her daughters can dress however at home and she can kind of say whatever and when the father's not there be the man of the house so to speak where
Mhm.
she's dictating where they can go. And then by the end, she's the same as her daughters, and they're all trapped in this childhood home prison together. That was really interesting. I think the mom's a cool character.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their reasons, and she is as much a servant of the system, right? She's an enabler, certainly, of the way things are,
Yeah.
as anyone else, maybe even more so at first. And then he just takes the ball and runs with it. And everything gets so much worse.
Yeah.
I keep
Um,
coming back to the ending, but the first 2 hours are great as well. Like the
yeah.
it's just the structure of the thing is so insidiously clever
Yes.
to get us to a point where we're watching a trial or a tribunal, really a one-man tribunal. But for the first 2 hours, it is this much more vibrant depiction of this family, right? They're going places, they're doing things. He's got his job, the girls have their activities. There's a whole world, and then the world just gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yes. It reminds me of like the movie Persepolis that was also like a comic.
Oh yeah.
Um, where yeah, the girls are like listening to rock music and wearing like red lipstick, and even the two daughters are doing that. You can see in the rooms they have pictures like never ever give up and like listening to English music on their headphones and working out. Um, they go to the store and they ask to tighten their clothes, and then all those rights are stripped away within
Yeah.
the home. All of a sudden, we're moving into this new neighborhood. You have to be more careful about who you have for friends, and you have to be more careful about what you wear. And it's kind of wild that a very small number of people can exert that much power and fear to the point where even within these small families, things like going to the store and asking for a different outfit are no longer acceptable.
Yeah.
But I think that's what the whole beginning of the movie is about, is giving context, especially to like Western audiences, and it premiered at Cannes, I think. So,
Mhm.
giving context of like, here's the world, and here's how vibrant it is, and how fun this family is in their respective kind of positions, but also hinting at all the flaws, and then it just goes in a direction that is so wild. I really enjoyed seeing that contextualized in a movie that way.
And of course, Russelloff himself has, I'm double checking the history here. He's had 3 prison sentences. He's been a part of the system and a victim of the system to the point where he finally fled. I believe he's still in Germany these days. He's still based there.
From my research of the movie, I heard that he basically directed most of this movie remotely over FaceTime, I think. And then once the authorities found out about this movie, he had like 2 hours to decide if he was going to stay in Iran or give up everything. He left all his electronics home and then he fled to Germany and he did post there, which which is
Yeah.
very interesting. I think he's still there.
Yeah. He went to Cannes for the premiere. And I mean, I remember seeing the images. He was holding up pictures of the actors who hadn't been allowed to leave Iran for the premiere. And he's still, at least he is still away from Iran and safe. But on May 8th, 2024, a week before the premiere, he had been sentenced to 8 years in prison and flogging, a fine, and confiscation of his property because he wouldn't withdraw the film from the lineup, which is just, I mean, it's, of course it's obscene, right? Like this isn't even, Panahi went through all of this,
Yeah.
and it is a tiny miracle that any cinema comes out of Iran that isn't, towing the line at this point, that we get to see it on the outside. But the idea too that we are simply used to, oh yes, it's another story of an Iranian director who risked everything to bring a movie to a film festival. It's not the first time. That's bad too, because we all simply accept that this is how it works now. And it's not the only country, it's just the one that's doing it right now
Yeah.
to have done this.
And so ironic because he came up with the story while in prison and was watching the guards, and then to finish the movie and end up almost in the same place again is so ironic and interesting, as you said, because all Iranian filmmakers are dealing with this right now. And that's been a struggle for me as a director, of seeing directors my age that are being executed just for making movies, while being here and being privileged enough to make my own movies and to be able to talk about this movie, for example, freely with you. Whereas I don't know what my life would have been like. I don't know if I would have had a life had I been born and raised in Iran.
It's the kind of the key existential question of any person, right? Like if I had been born somewhere else at a different time, or even at the same time somewhere else, what would have happened? But what you've done instead is you've made a movie about what it is to be born here, or at least to arrive here, in the case of the characters in Foreigner. And that cultural schism and the way people do and don't adapt, but with a genre aspect to it that I think will make it a little more accessible to people. But the text is the text, right? Like it's not subtext. This is someone who Yasmin is trying to figure out who she is. There just happens to be something else going on.
Yes, and I was watching Seat of the Sacred Fig this week with my boyfriend for the first time. And there's a scene where the daughter and the mom are driving, and the daughter's asking her about who she can hang out with, I think, or like where she can go to school. And my boyfriend pointed out, he was like, that's your scene, but like in reverse, which is funny because Seat of the Sacred Fig, I saw it after I had already filmed Foreigner. But there's a scene in Foreigner where Yasmin is sitting with her dad in the car, and she's like reading her magazine and talking about him not embarrassing her at school. But it's really interesting now, having seen both films, that in Seat of the Sacred Fig, that right is kind of taken away from that family. But in Canada, Yasmin can still kind of talk back to her dad, and he's cool with it. So yeah, it is really two different worlds, and I think I spoke just to the one that I knew.
Yeah, it does. I hate to say this about myself, but I kept expecting the turn of her dad being in on it, or on some level controlling her or the thing that is happening, which I don't want to give away for anyone who hasn't seen the film, which is most people because it's only just premiering.
Yes.
But the idea that he is who he says he is who he appears to be, like just a genuinely good father who doesn't understand why his teenager doesn't want to talk to him as she used to, and is not coping very well with losing the child to adulthood. That's such it's such a lovely touch and a great note for the film to have, because in the middle of all of the chaos, you gradually realize, and this is not a spoiler, he's the Rock. Like he's the guy who she could turn to, she just chooses not to.
Yes, and I wanted to represent my dad in that, and my mom, like, because there are really great Iranian people, despite, like, it doesn't matter what your religion is, it doesn't matter what your role is in the family, if you're the patriarch or the matriarch or whatever. Like, there's still really good people, and I fear that with a lot of Iranian cinema by Iranian filmmakers. Like we don't get to see that side as much. We see a lot of the trauma and a lot of the pain and kind of what's wrong within the family dynamic. So it was nice to just have a dad who likes his daughter and wants her to do well. So it's fun to like juxtapose the two movies against each other because who knows what the Foreigner family would have been like had they stayed in Iran. I think that's a big reason why they leave as well.
Yeah. Well, and also you've got the sense too with Strangers in a Strange Land, as Yasmin is adjusting to the world, like the new places she finds herself. The movie lets the the surrounding supporting characters be just a little eccentric or exaggerated. Like her teacher's a bit loud, and the girls are eerily synchronized. Threats come from everywhere, or potential threats, because she simply doesn't know how to decode them.
Yeah.
To the point where she clings to this 1990s sitcom that has helped her learn English and adjust her pronunciation and refine her accent. But at the same time, it's not telling her anything she needs to have that's helpful about the world. It's an idealized, ridiculous fantasy.
Yes. And I think that's like a nice parallel line between the two movies too, where it's like some of the threats are coming from the outside and it's things that they can't control and the circumstances that the characters live in that kind of shape them. And so for Yasmin to survive per se in Canada, she has to conform to these kind of eccentric and weird people around her. And that's the safer choice rather than being close to her family. And then in Seed of the Sacred Fig, it's like they don't want to conform, but they have to. You have to wear a hijab or you get killed, like Masa did. So yeah, but the stakes are really different. Like one is social survival, which can feel like the end of the world for a teenager. It
Sure.
did for me. Um, when you don't know anything worse, I think. But in Iran, it's your life that's at stake. So they're vastly different if you have a big picture understanding of both. But I think for a teenager experiencing different things and only having experienced one way, they could feel the same in a way.
Oh yeah, no, like when you're that young, everything that's ever happened is the most important thing that's ever happened, and you have no sense of scale, either emotional or global or political, right? And the
Yeah.
family is supposed to be the thing that keeps you safe, which we
Yes.
do have in Foreigner and in Seed of the Sacred Fig. Of course, it's the most horrible thing of all. When you learn you can't depend on the people around you.
Yes. And Yasmin has like a mini kind of version of that where her family starts saying like these girls aren't right for you, like you shouldn't spend time with them, be yourself, but they're doing it from like a positive place. So it's kind of messed up how by contrast in Seed of the Sacred Fig it's not from a positive place. It's just like the mom is saying on the basis of survival, don't spend your time with these people because we're being watched now, and the dad is saying it to exert control. So yeah, very different situations, but same story happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the dynamic is universal. It just
Yeah.
doesn't change. So I usually wrap the podcast by asking if there's anything from the film you chose that's influenced the film you made. But of course, in this case, you made the film before you saw Seed of the Sacred Fig. So I'll flip it over a little bit and ask, is there anything in Seed of the Sacred Fig that you would want to carry forward? Is there something that you kind of want to use, borrow, steal in your
Yeah,
next work?
I'm writing my next feature now. And like won't say too much yet because it's not fully fleshed out, but I know that it's about a family. So I think that there will be things from Seed of the Sacred Fig that find their way in. I'd watched Holy Spider before I made Foreigner, so a lot of like the aesthetics of Iranian cinema is like always in my work, especially in the house with like the earth tones and the blues and greens. Like, yeah, I really like the visuals of Iranian cinema. And then ironically, like in Foreigner, the movie gets progressively darker as it goes along, and in Seed of the Sacred Fig did that too. So that was a cool parallel to see. But I think in terms of like writing and character, there's a reason why Seed of the Sacred Fig won the special jury prize. Like, I think it has a lot to do with the writing and how well the characters are fleshed out and their dynamics. So that's something that I want to explore more. Foreigner was still contained, but more open. Like, there was more of a world outside. So I'm curious to try writing something that's a little more isolated, to like 3 or 4 characters. So yeah, I'll definitely be learning a lot from that movie.
Is this another genre project as well? Will it have that element?
Yeah, I think this will be a horror film as well. More psychological.
Okay. I'm finding more and more in the last 5 or 6 years that there's this new trend of people using the language of genre to tell straight dramatic stories within a genre frame that make people think they know how to process it. It makes it easier to buy into it, but at the same time, it can weaponize our expectations in a really interesting way.
Yes, I think that's a big reason why I love horror, is because of how easy it is in a way to like make a metaphor clear through little things. Like my short was zip, and the girl had a zipper instead of a mouth. And that was more about kind of the woman life freedom movement, about how women literally lose their voices. That was so easy. I feel like everyone was able to understand that because she literally can't talk. So yeah, I love that. As I'm getting older, I'm trying to find ways to kind of make my metaphors a little more complex. I like the simple things though. Like in Foreigner, it's just her hair is a huge reflection of her identity. I think that's clear, and I think that resonates with people. But I'm interested in like what happens if I take it a level up and make it a little bit harder to understand. Will people still get it, or do I have to do better as a movie maker?
Yeah, you'll find a way that works, and there's nothing wrong with pushing people. It's kind of what we're here for.
Yeah, very true.
My thanks to Ava Maria Safai, whose first feature, Foreigner, makes its world premiere at Montreal's Fantasia Festival this Thursday, August 29th at 9:30 p.m., with a second screening following Saturday, August 2nd at 2:20 p.m. You should still be able to find tickets at fantasia.com. Thanks also to Nicola Pender. She knows what she did. You can find Ava on Instagram at Ava Maria Safai, all one word, and you can find The Seed of the Sacred Fig on Blu-ray and DVD from Decal Releasing. It's also streaming on Hulu in the US and available to rent or buy on various VOD services across North America. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 41 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, get all the boosters. I'll see you next week.